What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to the fifth ever BTL Exclusive, the MLB AL Central preview on the Book It Sports Podcast Network. I've got two sharp MLB gents over here with Jovan and Peter Appel23. Follow him on Twitter, please. Okay. Two of the most ball knowers in all the lands. I'm excited to go over a couple of these divisions with you two gents. We're starting out with the AL Central and going to the NL Central. Keep it simple. Two Centrals today. But a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, though, Pete, no Yankee talk just yet. Are you going to be okay?
Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah, okay. I mean, the Yankees are – we could do an entire episode just on my feelings about the Yankees. So it's good that we're not discussing them today.
Yeah, and honestly, if I were you, I probably wouldn't want to talk about what they've been playing in recent years. But we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll save that for the East pot. Okay? For now, we got Centrals to talk. All right, boys? We'll keep it simple. All right, before we dive in, if you're listening to this, please drop a like, follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Give it a listen. Okay, put this one in the bookmarks. You might need it as we're about 3 weeks away from MLB opening day. Gosh, it's gotten here so quick. I'm excited to talk some ball with you two gents. Let's head in to the AL Central. I'll give you guys a breakdown of the odds to win this division. Kind of open at the top. The Twins -115 to win this division. And then you got the Tigers. Don't let them get hot. It might be too late at +350. The Guardians also at +350. The Royals, a.k.a. the Trophies. We love them. No respect. +850. Maybe a little bit short for them. We'll talk about it. And then the White Sox. I mean, good luck if you're trying to take a flyer. If you're from Chicago, I understand. But any other excuses, no reason to take this. They're +4,000 to win this AL Central. Jovan, how are you feeling about this division?
This is like one of the rare years that I think I'm actually kind of excited to see how the AL Central shakes out, because usually it's just a crapshoot of a bunch of teams. It's, who can be the least bad pretty much the entirety of the season. And now we have, I think, a lot of optimism across the board. Talk about the Guardians, who, I mean, they're the team with a lot of guys coming back. The pitching staff's always there. They have new blood coming in at manager. It's like there's stuff to look forward to there. The Tigers are everybody's new favorite shiny toy this year because they showed something at the end of last year, and I'm definitely involved. Royals made some additions. White Sox are the White Sox, but I mean, the Twins had a great season coming off of that. So there's a lot to look forward to, and I'm excited to hear what Pete has to say about the Guardians, because I know even though without Cal, the team still has a lot of promise, I would say, and I think you're in on them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, 100%. I'm in on them. And to be fair, right, I was in on them in 2021, 2022, and now again, 2022, 2023, and then now in 2024. I look at a rotation last year that set a record for the amount of innings pitched by a rookie trio. That was Logan Allen, Gavin Williams, and Tanner Bybee. Now, all of them showed spurts. Tanner Bybee was the most consistent, but they all showed spurts of being solid pitchers, and that's what Cleveland is known for. But they didn't really have Shane Bieber, and they definitely didn't have Tristan McKenzie last year. So when I look at the Guardians, I see the best rotation in the division. I see one of the best bullpens in the division, and I look at an offense that is, of course, run by Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, but they have a lot of other good young hitters coming up the pipe as well. I don't think it's going to be one of those Cleveland offenses that is struggling to score 2 or 3 runs, but I do think the pitching in the rotation and the bullpen is going to be eerily similar to those great Cleveland teams. I'm way in on the Guardians this year. I feel like they're the team in this division that really isn't getting the shine, kind of like the Tigers and the Royals.
Yeah.
But Pete, how are they going to do it? How are they going to do it without your guy Cal Quantrill on the bump this season?
First of all, his name is Cal Quantrill, please.
I'll learn how to say it when his ERA is below 10.
Yeah, continue. I mean, it is below 10, but we won't talk about that. What we will talk about is, I mean, it's tough losing him, but thankfully the Guardians have a ton of reinforcements in the rotation, like those first 5 we talked about. That isn't even discussing, right, guys like Xavier Curry or guys that they currently have in their minor league system. So if one of those guys goes down, they can plug and play. That's why just pitching depth, I think, is going to rule this division.
They better eat something. Xavier Curry cannot be the answer. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, do you think like the back end of the rotation with Logan Allen and Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee in the middle there, he's solid. Are they going to be able to get him through the season?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they totaled 350 innings last year, right? I have no reason to believe that they can't do it again, right? Tanner Bybee finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. Gavin Williams was the top pitching prospect for Cleveland. The thing is, he was a little bit banged up. And then he came up, was a little bit inconsistent, but is flashing high-level stuff, which garnered a top prospect nod. And then Logan Allen is kind of the definition of he's going to give you 5 innings, 2 runs, and that's about it. But that is your 5, right? Look at the rest of this division. Who has a better 5 than Logan Allen?
Can't say there's any team up there.
I might give you a breakdown of the state of this division, to be completely honest with you. Good thing we're starting with this one. Okay. Look, the Twins are the favorites. The Guardians, though, right behind them at plus 350, tied with the Tigers. Do we think the Guardians, sitting at plus 350, the second shortest odds, tie with Detroit's, are worth a look in this division?
I can't fault anybody for taking it. Like, I agree with everything Pete was saying. That rotation is going to be good. I don't think there's really a question about that with the Guardians. Rotation and bullpen at that. A lot of young pieces. I mean, Shane Bieber, I think, is going to have a fantastic season. He's starting to tick up velocity. I think I'm seeing in the spring, which is huge for him because that was one of the things that was very clearly missing last year. And you could tell that there was a big difference in his presence on the mound and a lot of his location and overall command. So I think he has a big year. I have a hard time believing that bottom of the lineup is not going to be a cesspool. That's my one issue with the Guardians, which could that hold them back? Like, I think it will to a degree, but like the pitching is going to keep them in every game. And for a rotation that's definitely better top to bottom than anybody else in the AL Central, I can't fault the price.
Let me ask you this, Pete. I'm looking at the projected bottom of their starting lineup this season. Bo Naylor, 6. Kyle Manzardo, who most people, including myself, haven't even heard of. Brian Rocio at shortstop. Miles Straw in the 9-hole out there in center field. I mean, most baseball people haven't even heard of a couple of those names. How the heck are they going to manufacture runs? They couldn't even do it last season. J-Ram looked like a completely different player, not clutch one bit. Are we expecting a bounce back here? Is J-Ram going to be able to carry this offense, Pete? Or are you a little bit worried about the bottom of that lineup?
No, I mean, Jose Ramirez is one of the best players in Major League Baseball. His version of a down year was like a 5 or 6 win season, right? And it wasn't even that much of a down year. Josh Naylor proved that he is one of the best offensive first basemen in the game. So you have 2 thumpers in the middle of that lineup. Also, Stephen Kwan, we forget, just 1 year removed, 128 WRC plus, one of the best bat-to-ball guys. 1 year removed from Andres Jimenez, finishing 6th in American League MVP voting. He's that good of a defender, which tallies up the WAR totals, but he also can be a very good hitter. So those 2 guys at the top with Jimenez and Stephen Kwan took steps back. It's fine. Stephen Kwan, remember, entering his sophomore season, kind of like that sophomore slump. But again, the Guardians, they don't give out long-term extensions, the one that they gave Andres Jimenez, by not knowing what they have. They know he's a really solid player. So if both of those guys maybe not return to full form that they were in 2022, but at least 80% of what that is, that's better at the top of the rotation. And you're talking about Bo Naylor. Don't tell a Cleveland fan that you aren't high on Bo Naylor. Dude slugged 470 last year, one of the best catching prospects in Major League Baseball. He's a stud. Kyle Manzardo, the guy they got for Aaron Savali at the trade deadline. We at Just Baseball love the bat. We think he's going to punish baseballs. Brian Rocio is their young shortstop prospect. I'm not very high on him. The thing is, the Guardians have 5 guys who they can try. They have a couple in the minor leagues. They have Gabriel Arias. They have Tyler Freeman. These names aren't exciting, but at least one of those, I think, is going to be major league average. Remember, this is the same Guardians team that was rolling out Ahmed Rosario when he was doing nothing and they were still winning games, right? And Miles Straw can't hit. You got me there.
Hey, don't sleep.
Hit.
Don't sleep. He's got a 1.5 home runs square MLB season long on Prize Picks. I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, he's not going to hit. Brian Rocio, whoever plays shortstop, is probably not going to hit, right? But I'm not telling you that this team is the best team in Major League Baseball, right? They all have holes. But I think the people that people don't know, right? Some of those players that are younger that people don't know, I think are really, really good. So that's why I'm very excited for the Guardians this year. Like guys like Manzardo, guys like Bo Naylor, they're really solid players.
Sounds like if everything goes perfectly for the Guardians, they could be a pretty solid look. Plus 350 to beat out the Twins this season. And speaking of the Twins, why don't we go over to them? Jovan, what are your thoughts on Minnesota this season?
They're a confusing team for me, like coming into this season, because it's weird because they're one of those teams that like you look at last year's season and it kind of feels like you would assume that a lot more people would be in on them kind of taking that next step because, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to after last year. And Royce Lewis, I guess, is the obvious thing that if that dude can stay healthy, that lineup takes a completely different shape. If Carlos Correa can have a pretty big bounce back year, I mean, that's massive for that lineup too. And then the pitching staff also kept them in pretty much every single game. They're definitely not as deep as the Guardians, not even close, but it's a new shaped team. So like I'm kind of I would say indecisive or indifferent about what I feel about the Twins. I feel like they're going to replicate, last year be somewhere near that. But I really don't know what to do with them. They're just a little confusing team in my eyes this year. I don't know how you think about it, Pete.
Pete, they've got a pretty solid looking lineup where, if these guys can stay healthy and some of these younger guys like Julian can, step up and continue to get better every season.
Love Julian.
Got a solid top of the order here with Julian, Buxton, Royce Lewis, Carlos Correa, right? He didn't have the greatest year last season, but we still know the type of player he can be. But then there's a little bit of a drop-off, right? Max Kepler, Carlos Santana, Matt Wallner, who, by the way, I'm extremely high on. Every time I say that guy's name, he hits a home run. Crazy power. Ryan Yeffers and Alex Kirilloff, sure, big drop-off towards the bottom of the order, just like every team. But the top could carry here. That's probably why they're sitting minus 115 to win this division, right, Pete?
Oh, if the Twins stay healthy, they are the definitive favorite in this division. Their lineup, there's some guys in the rotation that I like to talk about, and the bullpen is just overwhelming. The problem I have with the offense, and a reason I'm not betting on the Twins while I still think they are the favorite, is health. You said it yourself, right, Krabs? Staying healthy is super important. The Minnesota Twins had one player last year have 500 at bats or more. It was Carlos Correa. They now have two. The other one is Carlos Santana, who they got in the offseason, right? So it's Royce Lewis, tons of talent. Every single time the bases are loaded, he's hitting a grand slam. Just not a guy who's known for his health, right? You keep going down the list. It's talent. They just haven't stayed healthy. So if this lineup stays healthy all year, they're going to run away with the division. It's just too much thump in the lineup, especially if Correa bounces back, which I think he is going to. So overall, this is the best offense in the division. This is the best team in the division. But the reason I'm not investing in them this year is just because the health. They're a team that when they get to the postseason, I want it back. Just in the regular season, I'm more going to play them game by game depending on health.
Agreed. It's their division to lose, right? Jovan, you mentioned you got pretty excited when I brought up Eduardo Julian here. What are your thoughts on him this season? Is he a breakout candidate for you at the top of this order?
Dude, I think he is. I mean, we've seen it's not just for the sake of he's a guy that we love to bet on, in these weird little prize pick squares or whatnot, but he's shown some serious pop, and he's a guy that I'm certainly looking out for at the top of that lineup. I think he's going to have a huge, huge year. And if he breaks out, I mean, that's huge for the rest of that lineup. He's definitely one of those guys that has been a little more dependent health-wise. So if he can be a pretty big mainstay there at the leadoff spot, that would set the tempo. And to be honest with you, I think Jorge Polanco in that lineup, even though I think he missed, around 80 games last season himself, just like everybody else, that's a bigger loss in my eyes than I think most people would agree to. I love him as kind of the RBI option wherever he slots in at that lineup. I know they mix it in a couple different places. So if they have a guy like Eduardo Julian starting it off hot, that's who I want right there. He's my guy.
Look out for the Twins, ladies and gents. They are the favorite to win the AL Central, at minus 115. If everything goes perfectly and they stay healthy, it's their division to lose. Let's talk about the fun up-and-coming team that's getting some line respect for these odds to win the division, guys. The Tigers. Who would have thought they'd be the second shortest odds, tied with the Guardians at plus 350 to win this division? Jovan, we'll start with you and then go to Pete. What are your early thoughts on this Tigers team? Very trendy, very popular pick to be pretty good this season. But I agree. I think they're going to be pretty solid. They've got some really good young arms like Screwball and co. I like this Tigers team. What do you think, Jovan?
Yes, I know me and Peter are a little at odds, I guess with market respect for the Tigers. I know everybody's on them, and I'm gladly jumping in. I think we saw enough from this team, and it also helps scheduling-wise. I was looking at the strength of schedule coming into the season. They have the second least games against teams with a 500 record or above coming into last year or through last year. So it's kind of, I'm getting D-backs flashbacks because Krabs, we talked about this towards the beginning of last season. They were a very trendy team. We thought it would be a little struggle for them early, and they would kind of kick it into gear late. It was the exact opposite. They came out against a really good slate of teams and kind of proved they were here. Then they slumped a little bit, and then obviously late into the season, they got into a little groove, and they made that crazy run to the World Series. I don't know if the Tigers are going to do that necessarily, but it's the young team that showed a lot of promise. Everybody loves Skubal this year, and I 100% agree. If he can stay healthy, which is the main concern for that entire rotation, really, they're going to be great. Torque's going to take the next step, like he started to show us at the end of last season. They got Colt Keith, who I think is going to be a huge insertion in that lineup at some point or another. And I really like everything they got going. And I'll transition to Pete when I'm talking about this because I know his concern is definitely the back end of that rotation. I think there's room for some of those guys to kind of develop. We'll kind of see who it is. My favorite part about the back end of that rotation is that I think there's going to be a guy or two that kind of emerge as the solid 3 or 4 option. It's definitely a gray area of who's in that category, but I like the flexibility there, and I think there's room for some guys to emerge there, which I'm not the biggest Jack Flaherty fan just in general. He's never going to stay healthy. I'm not going to back him ever, but kind of with the Tigers, I don't mind that. And I love that it's definitely going to take the pressure off of that rotation, no matter how good or bad they end up being with the bullpen, which has been absolutely fantastic, was nasty to end last season. And I know it feels like they kind of can be like the Rays a little bit with that bullpen where maybe you don't need your starter to go 6 or 7, every single game. If you get a Flaherty start where we've seen it time and time again, he can only go 4 because he has 7 walks and 90 pitches. Like, you can lean on that bullpen from time to time, which is it's kind of why I'm all right counting on the back end of the rotation. So Pete, tell me what's up with the Tigers.
No, it's funny because, when we were doing the Just Baseball show in November and December, right before some of these lines were even out, I was talking up the Tigers. And I was thinking to myself, well, this team has the bones to be a really solid group, right? You already talked about some of the hitters, but a guy that you just didn't mention, and I'm sure you would have, but you were just listing a lot of great players, is Kerry Carpenter, Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson. That is a core of a really good trio. Right, and Cole Keith could win the Rookie of the Year in his first year. He's one of our favorite prospects in Major League Baseball. And Tarek Skubal is one of my favorite pitchers to watch in baseball. And Alex Lang at the back end and Jason Foley, they have some of the better players in the American League at their position. The issue is, when the lines came out, the market beat us to it. And then it just kept growing as they became everybody's darling. And when they got up to an 81.5 win total and they have better odds than the Guardians to win the division, I thought to myself, okay, well, now they're overvalued, right? I can love a team, but when I look at the market and the numbers are even higher than my expectations of being an optimist, that's when I think to myself, all right, this is just too much. Because the Guardians, from the best player to the worst player, are much more solid in the middle, right? Like when I'm looking at a Tigers team and I'm looking at Jake Rogers, who has some power, but overall, does not grade out as even an average catcher. And then you have Gio Urshela. Javier Baez is still terrible, right? Parker Meadows is a 24-year-old who, can play some decent defense in center field. It'll hit you 15 home runs. It'll steal you 10 bags, but it's like not much. And then I look at the rotation, right? I love Skubal, but he's never thrown over 150 innings. Jack Flaherty, Kenta Maeda, the health is not on their side. Manning, Reese Olson, Alex Faedo, Sawyer Gibson-Long, Casey Mize. Like, they have guys who I'm excited about, but none of them have proved to stay healthy. But if it all clicks, I see the vision, 100%. That's why if I'm betting the Tigers, I'm going for upside. I'm just not really touching their win total because I think they're either going to be, Jovan, to your point, a team like the Diamondbacks, or be in the mid-70s, sell at the deadline, and it's just another Tigers year. So there's a lot of fluctuation with the Tigers is kind of my opinion on them.
Let me give you a counterpoint because I was kind of in the same boat as you initially, where I was just like, okay, the Tigers basically need everything to go right to be successful in the season. So maybe you take the stab at them to win the division because if everything clicks and they stay healthy, then the ceiling is what the ceiling is. But I was talking about their scheduling, and I brought that up that it's very, very soft. It's especially soft at the beginning of the season, which obviously players can get hurt early in the season. But if we're counting on that at the long stretch, like I'm looking at games to start the year, they got series against the White Sox. They got couple against the A's, against the Mets. They have a couple against the Royals too, who we'll talk about them in a second, but I'm a little, I guess, lower on them than I really wanted to be. But I think to start the year, they can get a little hot, which would be huge for a couple of reasons, like to carry them to maybe a point where they're struggling with health kind of down later in the season, but it could also, gain confidence for a team that has a lot of young pieces around. So that's why I stuck around with the win total.
No, that's fine. I would also, I guess, counterpoint to your counterpoint. Just so many counterpoints here. You said that the Tigers second, right, in strength of schedule against teams over 500. I assume that list is filled with central teams, right? You're playing your division more, and basically everybody in both centrals were under 500 last year. So I assume the Guardians are near the top of that list, right? I saw something that's strength of schedule. The Guardians had the third easiest strength of schedule, right? I think the Royals are in that same boat. I think the Twins have the best strength of schedule because everybody else in their division finished under 500. So that's why, like, with strength of schedule in the centrals, I don't put a lot of stock into it, especially after how both performed last year.
That's fair.
More than fair.
That's fair.
Yep. Right now, the Tigers are plus 190 to make the playoffs. I've got my eyes on that puppy. Maybe they sneak in as a wild card. I don't know.
Don't do
this
that.
Division stinks.
Don't do that. No, think about it. Don't bet them. The team who wins the Central, I think, that's the only team they're getting, right? Because you haven't done. I don't know if you guys have done the East and the West yet. Like, the East might have all three of the wild card teams, or the West might have like legitimately two wild cards. Like, there's so many good teams. I just don't see two teams winning the Central. So if you're going to bet the Tigers, in my opinion, I just go with the division because I could see it, right? Definitely. I could just see also them finish with like 75 wins, where the Guardians, I feel like the upside is similar, but the downside isn't as bad.
Great point. Great breakdown, gents. Let's keep moving and grooving. We got to talk about the trophies. Let's talk about the Royals. Okay, plus 850, the fourth shortest odds to win the AL Central. Jovan, what are we thinking about the trophies? You hinted at it. Not as confident as you wanted to be.
No, because, I saw the moves in the offseason that the Royals made, and there were a couple of them. Like, they brought over Will Smith. They made, got Michael Walker. They got a couple additions to the lineup, too, like with Hunter Renfroe, and it looks cooler than I kind of expected it to be. I just can't get there because they're another team that's just like, you want to bet on them. I think they're going to be really good in the game-to-game sample size. Like, they're going to have plenty of their team total over spots that we love to bet, and they're going to have their great matchups. Just, I look up and down that lineup, I really don't think it got that much better. And I look at the issue that plagues the Royals time and time again, and especially last season, once one guy goes down in the rotation, once you get late in the game and the bullpen's an issue, it's still an issue. Hasn't really gotten that much better. So, like, I think they made improvements to get on the right track. It just feels like this year is not quite the year yet. I don't know if you guys agree, but I definitely will be betting them quite a few times in the middle of the season, especially early, again, when they have their matchups and when they're healthy. But, man, I wanted to get there with a win total over it. I just couldn't do it. I don't trust this team in the full sample size of a season.
Pete, I want you to talk about Cole Reagans because I know you're going to do it anyways. You're extremely high on him, right? Apparently, he's pumping close to 100 miles an hour in the spring training. He looks great. He's striking out people left and right. How high are you on Cole Reagans this season?
Pumping close to 100 miles an hour? You mean exceeding 100 miles an hour, 101 with 20 inches of induced vertical break. And for those, fans listening who maybe don't understand what induced vertical break is, it's the ride on the fastball, right? When guys are swinging through fastballs and they're swinging under it, it's often because they're late and the ball looks like it's flying upwards, but in reality, it's just not dropping, right? It's about gravity. Baseball in the way there should drop, but it doesn't. It stays up. And Cole Reagans got it. And he's got 3 other breakers. When I watch Cole Reagans, I look at Shane McClanahan as somewhat of a comp. But
you had to bring that up, Pete.
I know. It's so unfortunate, but like that's the level of talent, right? It's can win a Cy Young. He has a 177.5 strikeout line. That is insane for a guy who's got 100 innings under his belt last year. I mean, that's just crazy, but the hype is warranted. He is a freak. And this is a former first rounder, double TJ guy. So when he was, with Texas, the velocity wasn't there, the arm wasn't good, but whatever. Cole Reagans is awesome. Bobby Witt Jr., awesome. Vinny P, awesome. The issue is This team won 56 games last year. Like, people forget that. They were terrible. And the reason they were terrible is you got Jordan Lyles starts, you got Zach Greinke starts, which is good. It's going to be more Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo. But the bullpen is just awful. I like players on their team. They're forming the mold here. The window isn't open yet.
This is crazy. I'm looking at their projected bullpen right now for this season. They don't have a single guy with an ERA under 4.
It's horrible.
Horrible.
It's horrible.
Sure, you bring in Will Smith. How did he do last year? 4.40 ERA. That should help. Their closer, as of right now, James McArthur. Last year, 4.35 ERA. Stinks.
Yeah.
How the heck are they going to close out games against these other teams who have great back ends of their bullpens? That's an edge that a lot of these other squads in the AL Central have.
Yeah, if you want to attack the Royals this year, like Jovan said, go for team totals or tail Reagans or Lugo or Wacha in the first 5. I would not feel confident with them closing out the game.
No Jordan Lyles starts into their bullpen.
I mean, like when the top of the lineup is healthy, it's not like they're bad. And I guess I'm throughout the lineup, like I'm a little optimistic because like I love Nick Prado when he gets a chance to play. I love Drew Waters, who has been great, in his little spots too. And then they added a couple pieces with Renfroe and Frazier. And then you pray that Vinny P can stay healthy. Bobby Witt's going to have a great season. I'm still optimistic about Salvi, even though he's getting up there in age. It's just like Vinny P kind of trashed their lineup and trashed their season once he got hurt last year. It doesn't feel like they're immune from one injury doing that again, which is the problem with them this year to me.
We're going to move. Okay, we got the White Sox to talk about. Don't get too excited, everybody listening. Okay, we're going to move. But I'll leave you guys with this. Okay, I think if the Royals, with the amount of hype they've been getting, right? Bobby Witt just got paid. People were talking about him a lot. People were talking about Reagans a lot. They're hyped that they got Will Smith, right? You got Vinny P, who's back. Salvi Perez, still a beast. Melendez, whatever. A couple decent named guys, right? But I feel like if the Royals were really going to do something this year, they'd be getting line respect a little bit like the Tigers were, or at least be a little bit shorter to win this division. I feel like seeing them at plus 850, I know they stink. I know it's the Royals. I know they had, 55, 56 wins last season. But with all the hype, you'd think they'd be at least, plus 700. Them being almost closer to 1,000 tells me they're not doing squat this season. And looking at that bullpen, I don't see how they're going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think they, what's funny? I think they have so much line respect for who they are, right? They have a 70.5 win total. The fact that they're plus 700, like, for example, the Brewers are plus 700 to win the Central. They have a way better shot of winning the Central than the Royals do. So I would argue, kind of similar to the Tigers, the Royals and the Tigers are just overvalued. And it makes sense. They're two of the most hyped teams, like kind of everybody's dark horse to make it big. So they're not giving you any value on it. I personally think both these two teams are overvalued. That said, though, I think attacking the Royals on a game-by-game basis can be profitable when you go early or you go team total, because they still have a guy like, Jovan, this guy. Michael Garcia is kind of a beast, right? They have a good Drew Waters, they have a good top of the lineup, and they can get up on teams. The problem is over an entire season, if Reagans goes down, this is the worst. This team is going to be horrible. And Reagans doesn't have a track record.
They're toast.
Yeah. If Vinny P goes, if Bobby Witt Jr. goes down, they're going to win 40 games. But they have superstars.
So if everything goes perfect, right? If Cole Reagans is that almost Cy Young type guy, if some of these pieces they brought in, if their bullpen, improves at least a little bit, right? Will Smith, maybe he carries them. I don't know. If everything goes perfectly, if they stay healthy, if Vinny P progresses at the top of that lineup, those young guys keep playing well, maybe they can make some noise. But with one guy going down, that could literally be a domino effect and ruin their entire season. And that's a team I want to stay away from for any futures or preseason bets. Let's take them game to game. I'm with you guys.
If they win 30 more games than last year, they finish with 86 wins.
Yeah, they were bad.
Yeah.
They can do it by themselves. I will not be investing.
Speaking of bad, let's talk about the White Sox. We're going to keep this to 1 minute because nobody gives a hoot. They're plus 4,000 to win this division. Jovan, I want your thoughts on this White Sox team, and then we'll pivot to Pete.
They're going to be bad. The White Sox pretty much, unbettable if we're talking betting for the entirety of the season, I guess you could say last year. And I don't expect it to change too much, but I will say this. They made a couple of very underrated additions, which one of the reasons why the White Sox were so unbearable to bet on was their defense, bad pitching and bad defense. They didn't solve the defense, but they made a couple adds like Paul DeJong, Max Stassi when he's back there too. They added a couple of guys that I think can be a little decent, I guess, which is not saying much because they were second to last in defensive runs saved as a team last year. Nicky Lopez too. That was the one I was forgetting. So I think they're going to be a little better. Not by much. They made some adds on the pitching side of things too, but yeah, they're still going to be bad. That rotation's still bad. Bullpen's still bad, but it's a little better than last year. So maybe the slightest bit of optimism.
Pete?
I actually show value on their over on the win total. It's too low. It's too low. Every projection system you're going to find is mostly going to be in the 65 to 67 range, and you got a 63.5 win total. I don't even know if it might have gone up to 64.5 at this point. Like, this team 2 years ago was minus 200 to win the Central, and they still have some of the bones left. Like, they still have Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez and Andrew Vaughn and Andrew Benintendi and Yohan Moncada. Like, those are not bad players. Like, they're not. It's just those type of players you wouldn't expect to be on a 63.5 win total. Like, to go under that, that means they lost 99 or more games. That's a lot of losses. So, and I look at a rotation, right? You bring in Eric Fetty. He could be fine. Dylan Cease is still good. Maybe not great like he was, but he's still obviously good. Right? Michael Kopech, we'll see. Right? They have, the bullpen is horrible. Garrett Crochet, I don't know if he's going to end up being in the rotation, but the bullpen is dog shit. Like, we're talking about the Royals. This is as bad or worse. I mean, they're like Jesse Chavez. He's on his 58th team, and I think he's going to be like a high leverage guy for them. I mean, it's horrible. So they're another team. Do not take them full game. Like, I will never be comfortable sitting with them full game. But 63.5 is a little bit low. That's all I'm going to say.
Pete, I could get down with that. That's probably one of the nastiest futures you could take for this upcoming MLB season, right? The White Sox, I feel like every year they get hyped up for no reason. Like last year, people were gassing up that team, saying maybe they could be potentially a sleeper. And I'd say they flopped, pretty much more than any other team in baseball besides probably the Cardinals, okay? White Sox, not only were they bad and underperformed, they were atrocious, and it looked like they gave up on their season, fired the coach. Maybe that'll help going into the new year. I don't know. But adding a guy like Eric Fetty, is that really going to, solve all your problems? We'll see if he could bring that mojo back from the KBO. I don't know, man. Just looking at this team, they're bats. But if you're saying that total has some value on the win total, right, in this division with a lot of teams who are, relatively even, probably one of the, worst divisions of baseball, most people would say, why not? Why not back them on their win total after letting down everyone last season? Nobody wants to touch that over on the win total. And it's probably going to hit.
Why not is because they're horrible. Like, they're horrible. But
they're
like I said, like, if they win 65 games next year, they're horrible, but they go over their win total. Right? So I don't hate the win total over. I think that's the right move. Right? If we're talking about, the Royals and the Tigers, in my opinion, right? And if you disagree, then don't bet the White Sox. But if I think the Royals and the Tigers are both overvalued, that means there's other teams in the division that I think are undervalued. The White Sox being one, and the Guardians being one. I think the Twins are just exactly what they should be.
W's, ladies and gents, that is your AL Central coverage for this season. Real quick, we'll go around the horn and give our winner of this division. I'll give you the odds if you want them. I don't care about the odds. Just pick the winner of this AL Central this year. I'll start it off. I'm going to go with the Gavigards. Nobody wants them. I'm going to take them. Plus 350. Trendy teams like the Tigers, trendy teams like the Royals. Twins is a favorite at minus 115. I'm going to go with the team that nobody wants, nobody's talking about, the one that Jovan's rocking on the YouTube stream right now, the Guardians. Okay, at plus 350.
You want a little Guardian stat real quick?
Sure, hit me with it, and then give me your pick.
They had 12 walk-off losses last year, led Major League Baseball.
Did they now?
12 walk-off losses.
Sounds like they could be due for some good luck this season then.
You want to know something else, though? You flip all one-run results, the Twins would have won 96 games last year.
Jesus. Wow.
So I think it's Twins or Guardians. I think, like, the best bet is the Guardians. I do kind of think the Twins win the division, if that makes
Okay.
sense. Like,
Yep. Are
there's
you going
a
with the
ton of
Twins?
value.
Odds aside?
Odds aside, I would go with the Twins, but the bet
Okay.
should be the Guardians.
Okay. Jovan?
Sticking with the Tigers.
Wow. Go Tigers.
Good
That's
Tigers.
hard.
I do think there will be multiple 80-win teams in that division, though. So, like,
Wow.
I think the best bet is the Tigers win total.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if all of these teams are in the mid 80s and it's just
I wouldn't be shocked
crapshoot at the end. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
All right, ladies and gents, you heard it here first. Going to be an interesting AL Central for this upcoming MLB season. Let's keep it in the Central, but pivot to the National League. All right, we've got some odds to win this division. The Cardinals, surprisingly, tied now with the Cubs for the shortest odds to win the NL Central at plus 185. So you got the Cardinals, you got the Cubs at plus 185, and then you have Jovan's Reds. Very interested to see what he thinks about his squad this season at plus 340. The Brewers plus 700, like Pete said earlier, and the Pirates rounding it out at plus 1,600. We'll start with you, Jovan. Break down this division and let me know what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, we have to bring it up because I feel like this is the division where the odds look the weirdest, I would say, because we go through this every year with every sports. There's usually one very corporate division winner, which in the MLB, I don't think we really have that this season, but there's definitely odds that stand out. And as we saw from when we recorded the first BTL pod to now, the Cubs signed Cody Bellinger, I think the day of recording. And what do you know? The Cardinals moved to even odds with them to win the division, which
Weird.
I don't know how they're going to do it or how they would do it because I can't stand the way that rotation looks. And now, Sonny Gray's coming in a little injured. Who knows how long that's going to last, but that stands out to me as far as we're talking about this division. So it's looking at the odds, you can tell in the first part, like this division is going to be a crapshoot. It's going to be, you have a couple of teams with the Cardinals, you're expecting a bounce back year, or at least I am. The Cubs, they just got a big piece back. I like a big year for a couple of their guys as well. The Reds are building a lot of momentum. The Pirates showed promise at the beginning of last year, then kind of fell apart as they, lost health, and now they're getting healthy. You're getting O'Neill Cruz back. Something's going to give there. And the Brewers are probably on the cusp of a fire sale. So who knows what to get from them. But it's a weird division, and it's another one where it's going to be really exciting. The NL Central race has been for a couple of years now. Last year was awesome too. So I'm pretty excited to watch this, especially if we're talking about the Reds.
Pete, any early thoughts on this division? Take us to a team you want to talk about, and we'll get moving.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the Cardinals first.
Sure.
A team that, when they signed Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray, I think Cardinals fans, including all Major League Baseball fans, were pretty disappointed in the Cardinals, right? You needed rotation help, and you didn't really do it. That was on the surface. I disagree with that. The Cardinals last year, their biggest issue was these starters were not giving them length, or just Adam Wainwright giving up 30 runs before the game even starts. And then the bullpen had to come in and shoulder an incredible workload. The Cardinals bullpen in one of the highest workloads in Major League Baseball. Their closer goes down in Ryan Helsley, who's one of the best in the bigs. And it was a free fall, especially when a lot of the offensive pieces didn't have great seasons. But again, this is the same Cardinals team that if all of their offensive pieces are what we think they should be, and they're bringing up more, most notably Mason Wynn, their new shortstop prospect, who's an animal, Jordan Walker, who's still a freak in nature, and Nolan Gorman hits the living piss out of the ball, and that's not even mentioning all the other veterans and Tommy Edman and Brendan Donovan, the rest. So all I need from the Cardinals rotation is to give length. Kyle Gibson, every year he throws 180 innings. Lance Lynn, what does he do? He gives you length. Sonny Gray finished second in American League Cy Young voting last year. So I actually think the Cardinals should be the favorites in the division. I think a lot of the line movement was people are very excited about the Cubs. You bring back Cody Bellinger, and at the same time, Sonny Gray goes down with a hamstring thing. All of that accumulates. A lot of people pile on the Cubs. Line moves a little bit. I don't put much stock into it, especially in early March. Lines are susceptible if people come in with a lot of money based on things that are happening, right? If the Giants sign Blake Snell, the Giants are going to catch money. So I'm not really worried about that. I think that it shouldn't have moved, and I still think the Cardinals are the favorites in this division.
Well, no, Pete, the Cubs were the favorites, and the Cardinals moved to favorites with them.
Are you sure?
Which
I've been looking at.
Which makes zero sense.
I've
they
been looking at.
were plus 165. The Cubs were plus 165, and the Cards were plus 185 when we recorded, and now it's even.
It's so
Weird.
funny because, I mean, that is weird. Like, I've been, Pinnacle posts their true odds, and, I've been kind of around it. I didn't really see that, but I've just seen the Cardinals be the favorites at the sharper books the entire offseason, and that hasn't
Might be a
moved.
better sign anyways.
They might know ball.
Exactly.
Yeah, they might know ball.
Yeah, I can't speak to what you're talking about, Jovan. Just what I've been looking at. It's been the Cardinals the entire time, so that's why I was like, I just think it should be the Cardinals. I think they have it priced right.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. After burning everybody last year, I'm starting to come around. And you said it perfectly about the pitching staff. The issue was putting a massive load on that bullpen. And for all, I love the Reds, and we'll talk about that. But the young pieces in the Reds lineup, we're talking about a couple of them, I guess, a couple of young lineups in the NL Central. Talk about guys like Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn coming up, and then Nolan Gorman, who's starting to cement himself. Like, I think the Cardinals side of that lineup, just because they have all the veterans who kind of underperformed, I guess, to certain standards last year, kind of getting forgotten about. It's like, I think they're going to have a pretty solid year. You look up and down that lineup, especially with some of the guys coming off of, subpar seasons. It's a scary lineup, especially if you're getting the slightest bit of stability on the mound. I think they're the guys to go to in that division.
My one concern, and it's kind of similar to the Padres, is I hope the locker room's okay. And the reason I say that is Ollie Marmol was a dickhead last year. I mean, he was calling out Tyler O'Neill, right? Yachty goes. Waino is on his last legs. Now Wainwright's out of the locker room. Who's going to step up and be that Yachty? I don't know if it's Wilson Contreras, right? The Cardinals already acting like they don't like him. I assume it's Arenado and Goldie, but they've been there. I just don't know how this team is operating behind closed doors right now. That's why I'm not investing in them. But in terms of I think they should be the favorites in this division, is my thinking, over the Cubs, over the Reds, over the Brewers and Pirates.
I want to invest in the Cardinals this season for one reason and one reason only. Jovan mentioned it, because last year they were the most simple-minded, easiest pick to win their division, and they let everybody down. They were the most disappointing team in MLB last season. They should have been a playoff team. They ended up being almost as bad as the Nats. You could even maybe argue. I'm not going to go there.
No, you could argue. I mean, I don't know if you'd win it.
At times.
Technically, you could argue. You're correct.
They were bad. Okay, this season, I'm assuming these professionals, okay, because they might have been bad last season, but they're still pros. That's why they're there. I'm assuming they're going to turn the page, flip the script, and that is the exact type of team that I do want to back going into the season after letting everyone down in 2023. And seeing those odds now evened up with the Cubs at plus 185, tied up after the Cubs signed Cody Bellinger, is super weird. And if Pete's saying, well, the sharp books already had the Cardinals as a favorite, I'm loving that even more. That's music to my ears. Keep me away from the Cubs. We're going to talk about them in a second. But I'm with you guys. I'm on the Cardinals. The only thing that worries me is their defense. I mean, Jordan Walker, great hitter. That guy might be the worst defender I've ever seen. Nolan Gorman, he's literally a brick wall out there playing in the infields, and he's a great hitter, but that guy can barely move around. He's not the most elite defender, right? I'm a little bit worried about their defense, and they're a little bit old. But I do say, I mean, without a doubt, looking at these lines, the Cardinals, Krabs play, nasty play, and I do think they bounce back and win this division.
Sure. Man,
let's talk about the Cubbies.
My microphone just fell apart.
Yeah, you don't need that thing. We'll start with Jovan anyways. Cubbies, we already kind of touched on it, right? Very trendy team. Kind of like the Tigers, kind of like the Royals a little bit. They've got some cool new pieces. They had some momentum last year. They re-signed Bellinger, which is a great move, I personally think. He balled out last season. Maybe he's back. But they're too popular. They're too public for me. Jovan, what are we thinking about the Cubbies?
Well, started by this. Like, I love, their lineup coming into the season. I'm excited to see some pieces there. Like, you have Cody Bellinger coming back. I think Seiya Suzuki is primed for a massive season if he can stay in the lineup. And I know Pete Crow Armstrong starting the season in the minors. I think that just came out, kind of assumed that was going to happen, but he's going to be up at some point. So, like, they're going to be, again, I think an exciting team to watch hit. But I think the Amanga sighting kind of masked the fact that they didn't do anything else to their pitching staff, really. That would have given me the confidence for the Cubs coming into the season. If they made massive improvements across the rotation in the bullpen, I would feel good, but they really didn't. And they shelled out to get Amanga, cool, whatever. He's going to be all right, but I'm not really getting much else from that pitching staff that's going to inspire me for that team. Like, you're going to see Hayden Wesneski probably at some point get massive innings for this team. Keegan Thompson is been inconsistent in his role there too. Jordan Wicks is a guy that I kind of like long term, and I'm a little biased because I've seen him in the Big 12. He's at Kansas State, absolute dog. But I can't get there with this lineup and this rotation. And I know from painful experiences last year that bullpen is just so bad and so frustrating to bet on because they come in and blow it every single time, especially in that second half of the season where that was one of the biggest collapses of a playoff spot I think I've ever seen, which I was rooting for, obviously, because the Reds were also benefiting from that, but they didn't make it anyway, so it was a moot point. That pitching staff, I can't get there with it. It's cool they made, one or two big signings, but other than that, they had to do a lot more, in my opinion.
Pete, do you see Justin Steele replicating his elite season from last year? Because if he's going to have to absolutely carry this rotation, if the Cubs even want a chance, it's going to have to go perfect.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Justin Steele can be very good. I don't think he'll replicate the past season, right? I think the book's out on him, right? The kind of pitch mix that he has, and he was so dominant in the early parts of the season, but he still is a very good pitcher, right? I think when we're talking about whether we're going to fade guys or the regression candidates, I think it's important to, like, how much regression are we talking about, right? Like, Jovan was so spot on with Alek Manoah, but I don't think that you thought that Manoah was going to be in the minor leagues by the middle part of the season, right? But then there's some guys who we target for regression, like maybe it'll drop from a 3.3 to a 3.8, right? Still half a run. Like, that's regression. That's what I expect for Steele. Like, he's a guy who won't put up a 3, but I think he puts up a 3.7. And is still a good pitcher. Shota Imanaga, I think, is going to be awesome. This guy had the highest Stuff Plus grade in the World Baseball Classic. Stuff Plus grades your pitches, right? So 100 is league average, or it's not 100 exactly, but basically it grades it based on velocity, spin, a bunch of cool nerd shit that I like to look at. You know who else was in the World Baseball Classic? Ohtani,
Eric Fetty,
Yamamoto, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki. Imanaga's stuff graded out better than all of them. He has nasty stuff. He's been in the MPB for a while. Like, Kodai Senga was a similar age when he went over. I'm not saying he's going to have a Kodai Senga type year, but I don't sleep on him. I think he's going to be excellent. But to Javon's point, it's a top-heavy pitching staff. I like Steele and Imanaga at the top. I like Alzolay and Neris at the 9th and the 8th inning. But besides that, it's a lot of guessing, right? I don't ever want to watch a Jameson Taillon start ever again. Ever again. I'm done. Right?
Well, you're going to have to.
You're going to have to, yeah.
They have to win those 2 starts kind of every 5 days, right, to reach their full ceiling. And if maybe they get a couple other guys to, come in, but I don't love their farm from a pitching side in terms of who's ready right now. I'm more like it from the offensive side, but the offense is loaded. I think they're going to be great defensively. I think they're just priced correctly. Like, they should be the second best team in this division. They're priced like it. I didn't see any value on win total or division. They are what they are. They're pretty good.
Yep.
Let me ask you this though, because there are some rumors swirling around. I don't know how true or how not true these were, but the Yanks didn't want to shell out for Shota because he was a fly ball pitcher, pretty heavy in the MPB. That kind of scares me in some circumstances in Wrigley. Like, I feel like he's going to be trapped in some of those bandbox games, which, I mean, long term, talking that for the Cubs this season, that's a little scary to me.
There's the concern, the home run problem. If that becomes a thing, he won't end up achieving his potential. I'm of the belief that it's going to be really hard to adjust to him. And that problem isn't going to show as much maybe in year 1. It might show down the line. I think he's going to be pretty solid in year 1. I think he's going to be one of the better pitchers in the National League. That's how high I am on him.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Some big praise there. And look, this team does still have Yan Gomes behind the dish, former 2019 World Series champion. So anything could happen, right? But all jokes aside, it seems like we think the Cubs are good, not great, a little too overhyped, not looking to really place any bets on them right now.
Yeah, I don't want to fade them or tail them. Just they are who they are.
I still can't believe they missed that pop-up in right field. That cost them the playoff chance.
Was crazy.
Insane, dudes. Insane. All right. Let's move. Everyone is extremely excited to hear about this team, especially, Jovan's takes, since he has the meat glued to the Reds still, even from last season when he took them to win or make the playoffs, And then next thing you know, they give him the biggest blue balls bet of all time. They're looking like they're already a shoo-in for the playoffs, and they fold down the stretch. But Jovan is not giving up yet. I want to hear his thoughts on the Reds, and then we'll go to Pete.
Yeah, not giving up. That was the Reds to make the playoffs was the greatest bet that never hit.
It was.
Followed directly by that massive run. So I mean, I'm definitely indebted to the Reds in some degree for the ride throughout the season. But I mean, they're another one of those Tigers like exciting young teams that I think a lot of people are expecting to take a step forward this season, especially because a lot of their guys, Ellie included, Matt McClain was pretty steady. Same with Spencer Steer, but like a lot of them, they had their sophomore slump in my eyes, like towards the end of last season, which is why they struggled and eventually didn't make the playoffs. And obviously the pitching staff and the bullpen didn't help much as well. They were a pain just as much as the Cubs were watching and betting on those games. So, I mean, I'm extremely optimistic about the Red season this year. Ellie's been working on a lot of things. I'm excited to see him come out, new swing. He's been working with your boy Juan Soto all throughout this season. So hopefully a more contact-laden approach. The season seems to be adjusting well in spring. Sorry to bring that up, Krabs, but I love it, everything. And I will say my one concern is still Matt McClain right now, which he's going to be healthy for opening day. He's dealing with a little oblique injury, but if you know anything about oblique injuries, those linger. It's like he was throughout all their struggles. Him and Spencer Steer were the rocks of that lineup, especially Matt McClain. So if he's not healthy throughout all the season, I'm a little concerned, but not enough to kind of drown out my optimism, because that lineup, I mean, we talk about top to bottom. It's not just Ellie, it's not just Steer, it's Christian Encarnacion Strand, which is going to have a massive season. I think the power stroke is going to improve mightily. You got Jonathan India coming back, huge locker room guy. You got Will Benson, of course, which it's not even like a meme. It's not a joke. Like, that dude is legitimately good, and he's going to have a massive season too. So the lineup's there. The question is just, can the pitching staff keep up and I guess stay healthy, because that was another issue down the stretch. So Hunter Green, we all know he has health issues, but he's working towards that. He also developed a couple new pitches to hopefully drown out the home run issue. He's got the splitter, which he's continuing to feature more. Same with the curve. So I'm optimistic about him this year. There's a lot to look forward to. So, I mean, the bullpen made some additions. I think the best part that I really like about the Reds this season is that they made a lot of, I don't want to say White Sox like, that's like setting the bar low, but they have a lot of depth guys, which when we get to the stretch where, I don't know, you see Will Benson and Spencer Steer out on the 10-day, we're not going to like Stuart Fairchild on a consistent basis. Like, they have Tony Kemp, or they have, a bunch of guys with major league experience. So it doesn't put them in nearly as much of a rut as it did towards the beginning of the last season when they really struggled. So I am so excited. And I will be investing.
Pete, are you as high on the Reds as Jovan is this season?
The Reds and the Tigers are pretty similar for me. Two teams that I was looking to invest in, but then I saw what the numbers were, and I just thought they were overinflated, right? And it makes sense. A lot of people are really high on them. But to that point, just because they're overinflated at the beginning of the season doesn't mean that they won't go over, right? The Reds have all the makings of a team who can win this division. It's just reliant on a lot of young players coming off year one, and some players who are just coming off their best season, right? TJ Friedel is a guy who I expect to regress in center field, right? Is Will Benson really this guy, right? We've seen great players come across. Are they really as good as, their first season, right? Guys like Ellie De La Cruz, right? There's a lot of swing and miss in this game. I hope he can get on base enough. I hope he can stay healthy at his size. Matt McClain is already coming up with injuries. They really don't have a catcher. And then in the rotation, it's so much talent. It's so much, and it's so fun. Health. And also production. We talk about how great Graham Ashcraft is. Keeps turning in a 5 ERA season. Right? Like Lodolo. It's been banged up a lot. Green, the same way, right? He's coming in with new pitches. It all looks so exciting. There's so much talent. Frankie Montes is a guy I love. Love that pickup by the Reds. I also think their bullpen has a ton of talent. But it's just not a lot of proven commodities here with injury concerns, with the quote-unquote sophomore slump happening to some of these guys. So it's very similar to the Tigers. I go for upside with the Reds rather than go with the win total, in my opinion. But I think the Reds have a better opportunity of reaching that high upside than a team like the Tigers do.
So you'd rather take the Reds at plus 340 to win the division than take them to make the playoffs or their win total over?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of unproven talent, I want you to give me a quick Reese Hines nugget, because I think I'm starting to get into the headspace now that, not that I am kind of writing off Matt McClain as a certain injury, but it's going to happen at some point. The obliques hang around, and Reese Hines is going to find his way in the MLB at some point, probably sooner than we think.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to make a massive impact this year. I think he's a fine player. I think it's Matt McClain's position. And then there's also Ellie De La Cruz, and there's also Noel V. Marte. There's just, and then there's still Jonathan India still on the team, right? There's just so much up the middle that I just don't see the lane for him. Like, if he's playing for the Reds, that means the season went horribly wrong. But I could still think that he's a good player, right? It's just, if he's like the shortstop, that means McClain ain't in the lineup, Ellie ain't in the lineup, and probably Noel V. Marte ain't in the lineup. And if those guys aren't in the lineup, we ain't going over the win total, unfortunately. So that's, but I agree with you. I think he's a fine player, and I think he could be good.
Let me ask you this then. Who is your guy at the back of this line, or the back of this rotation? Because I feel like I've heard you and Aram talk about, Carson Spires. I guess, I don't know what the plan is with Brandon Williamson, but Brandon Williamson, you got Connor Phillips coming up too. Who do you think can emerge as the guy that's really taking that step out of any of those guys?
Can we include guys on the major league roster, or you're looking at
No, include guys on the major league roster.
I mean, I think Abbott's for real. I mean, I thought Abbott was great last year, and I think when the season is over, I wouldn't be surprised if he's leading this team in innings and he's recognized as the one. I just think there's a pendulum swing with everybody else. But I think Abbott is the guy whose pendulum swing is the least, but also has a similar amount of upside. So knowing that, I would think that Abbott continues to work off that last season and continues to dominate, because I think he's just the safest option of all of them. And I think he's very good. So I'd go Abbott.
Love that. I would love that.
I was a little surprised that this team caught the injury bug last year. I mean, they're one of the younger teams in baseball. Are we willing to bet on them being, banged up and injured and having guys in and out of the lineup for a second straight year when they have one of the youngest teams in baseball? I don't know. I feel like these guys, half their lineup is, prospects in their second year, or even some of them in their, still completing their first 162 games, right? How the heck did these guys all get hurt? I feel like the Reds had terrible luck down the stretch. Maybe they're a little bit due. I personally think they're worth a look at plus 340 to win the NL Central. I got the meat glued still, along with Jovan. This team can make some notes. They can make some notes. Has to go perfect, have to stay healthy, but I think these young guys can. I think
the most fun way that this division ends is if the Reds win it. If the Reds win the division, that means everything clicked, and then they're the most entertaining team in the sport. They are electric.
100%.
Especially in that mini ballpark where the games are ending 11 to 8. It's the best. I hope they win the division. That would be the most fun option.
Speaking of fun, we're taking Ellie Stolen basis for the season.
Yeah.
Looks where
it's just whenever he gets on,
guaranteed double.
literally guaranteed.
With him, it's just, is he going to tap into more power, and then he's rounding the bases instead of on first? That could also be a thing, right? He starts selling out for power, strikeout rate raises, and his OBP falls, and he just doesn't have as many opportunities. That'd be the only concern. But if he's on first, he's going.
He needs a lesson with the Nats hitting coach. Hit some ground balls, will you? He needs a meeting with Darnell Coles.
Please don't send him to the Nats hitting coach.
Well, Jovan, real quick, before we move, because we do have to get moving and grooving here. Last year, you called the Reds when nobody else really liked them. Sure, there were some people saying they could be okay, but you put the beat on tape, and they ended up, almost making the playoffs. Crazy, they're the Reds. Come on. You called Ellie being a stud, and sure, he had some ups and downs, but I'd be willing to bet that he's going to end up being a pretty darn good MLB player down the line, right? The guy's potential's through the roof. Who was the one guy this year on this, in this projected lineup? It could be in the rotation, bullpen. I don't give a hoots. But who's someone who's going to actually get some innings this year and play? Maybe not, their best player right now like Ellie, but who's going to be the breakout guy in 2024 for the Reds? Who's going to carry this team? Who's the guy you got your eye on who most people aren't expecting to carry this Reds offense or rotation?
Well, I'll give you two, because one of them is definitely Will Benson. I think he's going to step up and be that guy. That's not even a biased take just because I love betting on the guy, but he has shown some significant improvements from really the beginning of last season towards the end. And coming into this year, I'm expecting him to, first of all, get more consistent playing time. And I think he's going to tap in a lot more to the power. That's what we've been seeing a little bit in spring training. And I think that's going to continue. But the other guy who I think I mean, he didn't get as much time as an Ellie or Matt McClain in the lineup. So I think throughout this year, we're really going to see it. Christian Encarnacion Strand's going to hit 30 bombs. Like, he's going to be that guy that certainly taps into his power. Obviously, when you have plenty of games at Great American Ballpark, it's easy to do that. But he's going to be the massive power guy towards the back end of that lineup who's, driving Ellie in after he steals second, and with Matt McClain sitting on base right in front of him too. So excited to watch both those guys.
All right. Reds at plus 340 to win the NL Central. Let's see if they can build on that momentum from last year and make some noise once again. All right. Real quick, before we cover the Brewers and the Pirates and close out this pod, want to remind you guys, go subscribe to our YouTube page at Book It Sports. Free, takes 3 seconds. You can go rewatch all of our live content or tune in and watch the live content on our YouTube page. Almost at 5K subs. If we get to 5K subs before March Madness begins, I will do a 24-hour live stream. Okay, so go make it happen. It's free. Drop a sub on the Book It Sports YouTube, and also go follow us on Twitch as well if you want a more engaging chat during our live content. Okay, we have shows running every day, all day during the week at Book It over here. Okay, and PODP, we're going to let you plug your stuff towards the end here as well, because the people need to know where they can watch your baseball content too. But for now, we got to talk about the Brew Crew, ladies and gents. I got a weird feeling about the Brew Crew, right? Everyone's out on them. They're, potential fire sale team. They just traded Corbin Burns. They're sitting at plus 700. When's the last time we saw the Brewers, preseason in the NL Central with that much value, right, to win this division? So I got a weird feeling. Everyone's kind of taking one angle with this Brewers team, saying they have no freaking chance. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys still hanging around. Keep this division weird, right? You look at some of these other squads, Cardinals, they could easily flop again. Cubs, very public, not super bought into them. Reds, inconsistent. They could win the division. They could finish in last. The Pirates stink. Why not take a flyer on the Brewers at plus 700? Historically, they're one of the best teams and organizations, in this division, at least winning-wise, over the last couple of years. Why not look at them at plus 700? Jovan, we'll start with you.
Man, and I always get these flashbacks just because they operate pretty similarly, but I can't stop thinking of the Brewers as like a Rays type after we see them just trade away Corbin Burns, and they get a good pitching prospect back in DL Hall, who, I mean, yeah, he's had his up and downs in the big league so far, but he's going to figure it out, and he's going to the Brewers pitching lab, which has been successful. And you see a lot of guys in that rotation and in that bullpen that have a lot of upside and who they are going to continue to develop. And then just a couple of just underrated guys that they have sitting in the lineup too that could break out. That sneaky signing with Rhys Hoskins that they have there. And the rest of that lineup has a couple of young guys too with a lot of upside. It's just, I think they're going to be, slightly above average team, definitely more competitive in a lot of these games than people think. So I guess I could say I'm higher on the Brewers than most people are. The one concern, I guess, why I'm not investing in them for the majority of the season is because the fire sale might be pending, depending on how everything goes. So I really don't want to get involved there too much, but I can tell you on a game-to-game basis, I want to see what they're priced at in the market throughout a lot of these games, because they're going to be a sneaky team, I think, just like, the Rays are every year and people count them out.
Pete, do you agree or disagree with Jovan that the Brewers, could be a live dog that nobody expects this season?
I agree so much that I bet him at plus 800 to win the division.
Wow, WCLV.
Wow.
Good work.
WCLV.
Tell me about it.
So, who has the best bullpen in this division?
Take a guess
Not
here,
really.
educated, and say
Not
the
really
Brewers.
close. It's the Brewers by a
Brewers
mile.
and it ain't close, right?
Yeah.
Who is, if you had one ace, right, game one of a series, who's better than Freddie Peralta, right? You could say Steele, maybe, right? But they're in the same ballpark. You could say Sonny Gray. I would put them in the same ballpark, right? So we got an ace up top. We got a great bullpen. The problem is the rest of the Brewers rotation. It's not a lot of names that anybody's very excited about, like Wade Miley. But at the same time, guys, like, how many Wade Miley starts have we seen where he's like 5 innings, 1 run? You're like, that was boring, but I lost my bet because I tried fading him, right? What about Colin Ray? You know plenty about Colin Ray, Jovan. How many times?
Dude, I back him in the weirdest spots. He finds a way some of these times.
Finds a way. DL Hall's a real arm, and they have more coming up the pipe. Then I look at the offense. Sal Frelick is a good player. Willing Contreras is one of the best catchers in baseball. Christian Yelich is still Christian Yelich. We forget 2 years ago, Rhys Hoskins, 30 bombs. Willie Adames, I think he bounces back. Garrett Mitchell is a good hitter. Jackson Chourio is arguably the best prospect in Major League Baseball. And Joey Ortiz, who they also got in that Corbin Burns trade, is also one of the better Orioles prospects. but he went over to the Brewers in that deal. A lot of guys that, the Orioles, they have this incredible farm system. Yeah, but now 2 of those guys are on the Brewers now. And the Brewers, I love all the points that you guys are making. This is the team, right? We view this division as a crapshoot, right? So why not invest in the team that is almost triple the odds of all the teams at the top? The team who just won 92 games. But hey, they gave away Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff. Season's over. They've done this before. Now, why am I not going with the win total? Jovan said it. Fire sale. If they don't start off well, Devin Williams gone. Right? Wade Miley gone. Colin Ray gone. Jacob Junis gone. I mean, they're all gone. Right? Yeah. That's why a good first half could mean that they don't sell. And if they are having a good first half, that means they're in the thick of the division. And then it's going to come down to the end. So
and I want my coins on the Brewers. That organization, organization wins. They overperform year in and year out. They win.
Now, no Craig Counsell anymore. No David Stearns anymore. So it's not the same Rays-esque. But the Rays gave up Andrew Friedman and who they bring in, right? It's an organization that I think is at the forefront of not spending any money, but still finding ways to win. Not quite the Rays, but close, right?
Similar identity.
Similar identities, right? So I'm looking at them plus 800. Like the Royals have worse odds to win their division than the Brewers do. That's stupid. But nobody cares about the Brewers because they're boring and people expect them to sell. So yeah, I bet the Brewers. And like I don't see how you can bet anybody else to win this division when we all know it's a crapshoot. Yeah, the Brewers have problems. So does every other team. Let's see what happens.
If the Cardinals didn't just have one of the most, biggest letdowns we've seen in recent MLB history last year, and then now they've got that weird line movement stuff going on with the Cubs there, both as, dual favorites to win this division. If that wasn't going on, I'd probably say the Brewers to win this division would be my favorite future for the upcoming MLB season. No cap. But the Cardinals, getting weird vibes from them, have a feeling looking at the odds, they might pull it out. But why not sprinkle on the Brewers? Why not sprinkle plus 700, plus 800? Are you kidding me? With this organization, nobody wants them this year. Why not? This division's wide open. Come on.
The most likely scenario is the Cardinals win this division. But like, what's the second most likely scenario? Like,
who knows?
I think you can just make an argument for everybody else. So
that's what I would say.
If the Reds don't have a perfect season.
Yeah, Reds go 162-0. It's probably I'll put that number 2 on the list.
No, but you know what I'm saying though when I'm talking about value, like the Reds are half the odds of the Brewers. That's not.
And I'd say the Cubs, Reds, and Brewers have an equal chance to win this division, right behind the Cards. So I'm so with you. Yeah. Take a little stab, throw some lunch money on the Brew Crew, and don't be surprised if they hang around this year. Real quick, Jovan, strength of schedule at the beginning of the season. Are you able to check that for the Brew Crew? I'm curious to see how they're looking. Right, Pete had a great point. If they don't start out well, if we're a third through the season and they're 4th or 5th in this division and struggling, they're toast. Right, so we got to make sure they don't start out with the hardest schedule in baseball.
Yeah, that's why it's not easy. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Series
well, maybe that's why they're at plus 700. Okay.
Twins, Mariners, Reds, Orioles, Padres, Cards, Yankees, Rays, all in April.
Okay.
So I mean that is difficult.
Sketch. You left that one out, Pete, when you're going over your Brewers future.
I mean, yeah, if they get swept by every team that's good and every good team wins as a favorite, just like we all know that happens every time in baseball, then hey. Yeah.
I mean, we know just
like me. Good.
We know just like the Rays play, like the pitching staff is going to keep them in every one of those games. Like even if they're playing, I don't know, pick a game from there. I mean, the Mariners, those games might all go under if you take the score combined of all 3 games and put it at a total of 1 game. It's just like they're going to be competitive. We know that. That's how the Brewers are going to act.
And
I got a question for you two, gents.
If the game is tied, you're probably taking the Brewers if they're at home. Better bullpen.
Yes.
So I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's worth it, the value. Don't hammer it, though.
Yeah.
Schedule aside, still worth a sprinkle. Agreed. 100%. Real quick, got to get your guys' takes on the Pirates. Is there any chance we see Pittsburgh at plus 1,600, by the way, to win this division that we've been talking about is, wide open? Is there any chance they make any noise this year? Jovan, we'll start with you, rapid fire.
No, I don't think so. I think this is a development year to see, what they have in a lot of their guys getting healthy. Brian Hayes is amazing. He's going to have a great year. They need a healthy O'Neal Cruz, see what they have. Henry Davis going to continue to develop. A lot of those guys, I think it's just a try and see what you got year, see if you can get them for a full healthy season, and then kind of move from there. I think they really haven't made many improvements to make me believe the plan is anything otherwise. So they'll be the same Pirates, in my opinion.
Pete, thoughts on the Yankees farm system, aka the Pittsburgh Pirates?
It's not very good. No, it's fine. I mean, the Pirates, their window is going to open soon, with all their top guys coming up, but I think they showed their hand. Marco Gonzalez, Luis Ortiz, who else is in this dog shit rotation?
Mitch Keller, Martin Perez.
Like Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, and Luis Ortiz are going to be making 3 out of your 5 starts. That's the division. That's the breakdown. I will not be investing. I'm not fading. But I think the reason they showed their hands are they could have been more active in free agency, but instead they sign Aroldis Chapman and they sign a bunch of veterans who you expect they're just going to flip at the deadline if they have good first halves. They showed their hand. They're not going to be competing this year again by starting Paul Skeens in the minors when he's the second best pitcher on the team already. Yeah, I mean, they're like Roansy Contreras is not any good either. He's out of options. So if he doesn't perform this year, he's done with the Pirates. I'm disappointed in them because I think they could start acting like teams like the Reds and teams like the Tigers and teams like the Royals, but they didn't. They're just complacent.
They're not here to win. They're not here to win.
And
they're like my Nats right now. They don't give a
You know what their owner's name is? Bob Nutting. Is that a guy? Is that an owner you want to back?
Whoa. Yeah, that's a crazy name and crazy Pete Nug that he just dropped right there on the pot. That could be the right way to close it out here, folks. Perfect segue. Okay. Pirates not doing squat this season, not fading them, like Pete said, right? Probably a good move. Fading teams in last place, that can't be profitable, at least not in my contrarian nasty craps brain, right? Because that's just too easy. Just keep them off to the side. They stink with these moves. Not going to lie, I like the moves, like bringing in guys like Chapman, although it looks stupid and for no reason. It's a win-win. Maybe the Pirates shock the world the first couple months, and then they have Chapman locked in. If it doesn't work out, they move him at the deadline. It's a win-win for the Pirates. So I actually like the move, but I don't like this rotation. I don't like this lineup, and I don't like anything about this team. Straight up. 2 things I will shout out that are good. Obviously, good for baseball that we're getting O'Neal Cruz back. And they do have some young talent, right? Brian Hayes, I think he's going to be in his prime and have his best season of his MLB career this year. That guy's probably the best defensive third baseman I've seen in the NL, besides maybe Arenado in his prime a couple years ago. But my goodness, I really like that kid. And let's not forget, they've still got some other good pieces like Henry Davis. Jack Sawinski was decent at times. Brian Reynolds, is on this team for the long haul, at least as of right now, until they trade his contract. They've got a couple guys, but their pitching is that bad. At least their starting pitching is. They're not going to be able to hang around these teams because they're going to be coming back, down 3-0 nothing in the 4th inning already in every game, 4-0, because their starting pitchers are that bad. They're not going to be able to compete.
Yep. O'Neal Cruz, Brian Hayes, and Henry Davis is a good young core, right?
Yes.
Juan Soto's younger than 2 of them, and he's like 6 months older than Henry Davis. Just saying.
Yeah, he's also
with that. Krabs is out.
He's also a trainer.
And I'm done.
Well, Pete, good segue here, though. We'll close this puppy out. I would love to talk some Yankees and some Nats with you maybe before the season starts. I'll have my people reach out to your people and see if we can get some time on your calendar. But real quick, plug your socials, plug your shows. You've had some pretty cool guests on. Let the people know what's going on with your shows and where they can watch them.
Yeah. I host, or I'm one of the 3 co-hosts for the Just Baseball show. We just had Grayson Rodriguez on. We had a dual interview, which was awesome, with Tanner Bybee and Stephen Kwan on the same episode. We got Patrick Bailey coming out on Monday. So we got a lot of MLB talent that we're talking about, and obviously just going over tons of stuff. It's not like super betting focused, but we will have our win totals and futures closer to the season. So you can grab little nuggets from all those, player props and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you can just follow me on Twitter at PeterApple23. And I write a daily betting article on justbaseball.com.
Perfect. The Just Baseball guys are absolutely locked in. If you guys are listening and don't know what they got going on over there, a bunch of young, smart baseball guys who are washed up, but they know how to talk ball. I'll give you guys that. Okay, you guys know how to talk ball. And you got some good interviews so far. Grayson Rodriguez, pretty cool. Go check that puppy out. All right, and go follow Pete on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Jovan, any closing opinions, any closing thoughts before we wrap this puppy up?
Reds over 161.5 wins. Just moved to 150 on my book. 5-unit
Wow.
max play.
Okay, lock it in. Reds, look, they're America's team when they're good. Everyone rooted for them last year. Let's see if they can pull off some magic once again. We're all rooting for them. Okay?
Yeah.
Ladies and gents, appreciate you guys listening. This pod ran over a little bit late. That's what happens when me and Pete are on the same pod. We talk a lot. Jovan, thank you for keeping us locked in and going over your Reds analysis. Very excited for the season. Guys, drop a follow on Twitch, Book It Sports. Drop a sub on our YouTube. We're trying to get to 5K subs before March Madness starts up here in the next couple weeks. Please make it happen. It's free. It's easy. And if you guys want more content from us, follow Peter Apple 23 on Twitter and follow us and watch our show Behind the Lines every day, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, over on the Book It Sports Twitch and YouTube. If you guys want bets for the day, you can find us over there. And please drop a like and follow us on Spotify or wherever you guys get your pods. We'll run this back again, maybe talk some Yankees, talk some Juan Soto fades with POD Pete coming up here in the coming weeks. For now, that was your central recap, folks. We'll catch you. Baseball's only 3 weeks away. We'll be seeing you. Thank you, gents.